Well, it's great to welcome Viv Thomas here to the Centre for Mission Leadership. Viv, it's good to have you with us.
It's a joy to be here. Thank you very much.
And Viv's agreed to do one of our 5 minutes with interviews. So I've explained the rules to you already. We're going to time you on this thing and set the clock for 5 minutes, and then at the end of that, that's the end of the interview. So are you good with that?
I'm very happy with that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's start the clock. Now, first of all, Viv, you're in an organisation, you're the founder and director of Formation. Tell us a little bit about that organisation.
The strapline of the organisation is developing the spectacular ordinary life. So the idea is, how do we develop disciples and leaders who are going to live their ordinary lives spectacularly well? Because if you don't live the ordinary, you don't get the spectacular. If you don't live spectacularly well, you don't kind of get the ordinary. So it's the sort of life that Jesus called us to live. That's the focus, with a big emphasis on leadership development.
Do you think evangelicals particularly have got a weakness in terms of what some people call incarnational theology, or do you think that's across the board, all Christians?
I think evangelicals have got a particular problem with incarnational theology, because we have been a bit otherworldly in the way in which we've looked at what's going on. But I think we're learning slowly that we need to live our lives in the real world and engage with what's right in front of us, rather than some other place that we think of as a good place to live.
Okay, you've worked in the past, haven't you, for Operation Mobilisation, fantastic mission agency. And sometimes people say that discipleship in places like the continent of Africa is a mile wide but an inch deep. Do you think that's a little bit imperialistic? Do you think we in the West are not as good as discipleship as perhaps we think we are? Because that implies some kind of superiority, that statement, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think when people say that, they've got no idea what they're talking about, because it can be a mile wide and an inch deep anywhere in the world. Some of the places I've been in the world where people don't read as much, or they don't study as much, you can interpret that as saying this is just superficial. The truth is it's not. I think part of the issue for us in the West is we've got a certain idea as to what discipleship means and how it looks, and we've got no concept as to how it works in another culture. So imperialistic would be a good way of describing it.
Okay. And you're an Anglican priest as well, and you're the teaching pastor of St Paul's Hammersmith.
Yes.
So how does that fit in? Being an Anglican rev, how does that fit in with your organisation?
It fits in really well, because I do a lot of travel around the world, lots of teaching in different places. So this keeps me rooted. I'm very, very thankful for St Paul's Hammersmith, because here I'm part of a community. Here I'm part of the leadership in one form or another, sort of oscillating in and out of what's going on. So it's a great place for me, and fits in really well with what I do. Make sure that I keep earthed and not just spouting off very lovely ideas around the world.
Okay. One of the challenges, obviously, we're in this kind of post-Christian paradigm in the West. Perhaps Britain, one of the most secular countries in the world.
Yeah.
How do you think the church is responding to being in that cultural context? How is it responding badly, and what could it do to respond better?
I think our biggest problem is really noticing what's going on around us and then having the courage to do something about it. So it's really easy for us to just get locked into our own little church culture and not have any vision for social transformation, not really get the justice theme of Scripture, and then avoid what's going on in the middle of our nation. So I think there's a big move that needs to be made here around the church getting involved in as much local action as possible and getting engaged with all the big themes of our society. So I think there is a tendency for us to be inward-looking, particularly the evangelical and partial charismatic side can just get a bit inward-looking. Okay. So we need to look out.
Mentioning evangelicals, I last bumped into you. You were across the aisle in the North Transept of St Paul's Cathedral for John Stott's funeral.
Absolutely.
And I knew him very well. I was just one of his study assistants before I went to Wycliffe. He's been a profound influence on my life. Has he been an influence on your life, and in what ways?
Yeah, we met once at a dinner party, and he kept on saying, I should know you. But
do I know you?
That's what he said to me. That was what he was saying.
His dulcet tones.
And I've got the feeling he'd said that to about 25,000 other people. But very influential, particularly in the early days for me, reading that kind of solid theology, treating the Bible seriously. integrity, all of that stuff was really very important. So much admiration for his work and the way in which he was able to hold all sorts of things together, hold together mission, hold together study, hold together community, and a wide vision of the church.
Yes, and also I know it's the title of a McLaren book, A Generous Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
But he truly did have a generous orthodoxy, didn't he? Whilst he was conservative, he was generous to his theological
He certainly did. He was going for as wide a place as possible.
Yeah. I think that's the bell ringing. So who does the bell toll for? It tolls for you. So that's the end of the interview. Viv Thomas, thanks very much for joining us.
My joy, Greg. My joy.